Hey, everybody. This is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman, back with the 197th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We've got 22 people with us, including the great Hetty Tripp and the wonderful Nancy Naparco and so many other great people. This is the day before Election Day. We used to say it would be the day before the election, but I'll bet you probably a majority of the public has already voted. And it's a welcome change to our system, but we're looking at Armageddon. We're going to meet again on Thursday, by the way, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific time, to do a quick, see what's left. Let's put it that way. We got John Brakey and Ken Bennett with us from Arizona, who are going to give us a deep report on what's going on there, as we have Mimi Kennedy as well from Los Angeles, who's done an on-the-ground inspection of the voting situation in LA, as only Mimi Kennedy can. Mimi, you and I went to do the inspection, was it 4 or 8 years ago? I don't remember. It was pretty amazing. But here we are again. This is going to be important stuff, and we will do a rare video so that Mimi can show us exactly what's going on. We'll have to be careful to be able to translate that for the radio. And Ken Bennett can only be with us for till 2:30 Pacific time. So we will jump in with him first, but this is really great. And man, the whole country is on pins and needles. Oh my God, there's Lissa. Hi, Lissa, up in San Francisco. So Mimi Gurman, you are in Oregon, and we await your opening poem, please.
Okay, so this poem is called I Vote. I vote for the young doe, reaching for the willows, for the illuminating grace of a butterfly, for a sky so blue you forget you are human, and for the mountain's tongue wetting desert hills. I vote for the song at the crushing weight of dawn, for the geometry of sound in the quaking aspen groves, for the farmer picking asparagus near the uncaged hens, and for the night chatter of small frogs in the warm springs. I vote for bees drunk in purple thistle, for the scent of coming rain, for laughter inside of a season, and for the moon fully uninhabited by voices. I vote for the thundering secrets of lightning, for those who know we are stardust, for the premonition from the old dead bones, and for the seeker who has mastered stillness. I vote for a glimpse of sight, for shadows that come from a cloud, for the flowers that ignite in bloom, and for a child's awe. I vote for reverence, for wind and joy, for nothing, and for waking with the wisdom of the river's stones. I vote for the yellow of the flamenco dancer's skirt, for the poet and the torn page, for the way of the owl and the curious mouse, and for the stars thick and ablaze. I vote for the politician's graveyard, for shovels and for seeds, for impermanence and the orange wings of the dragonfly, and for love to braid the bread that makes us whole.
Whoa, fantastic, Mimi.
Thank you.
We love you. We love your poetry. What a great way to start the day before Armageddon here. Thank you so much, Mimi Gurman. And it's great to see your smiling face alongside that of your cosmic twin, Mimi Kennedy. It's really great. Both of you together. It's a dream come true. Fantastic.
Mimi,
all right.
Can
listen.
you put that in the chat?
Oh, I will. Sure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's John Steiner with us and Margot King, our Colorado couple here. We got 32 people already with us, and this is the Zoom call with the longest attention span in America. So we're going to go straight through today. We may be joined by Andrea Miller soon, but we have Ken Bennett and John Brakey, who are going to give us an on-the-ground report from swing state Arizona. We have to remember, that in the 20th century, 21st, in the 20th century, neither Arizona nor Georgia were ever considered swing states. I mean, these were hardcore Republican bastions. North Carolina generally too. So there is a change in the world, but John, no one has been with this issue longer than John Braken. He's managed to hook up with the great Ken Bennett, former Republican. Were you the Senate Majority Leader, Ken? What was your position?
Well, I was the Senate president for 4
President.
years, and then I was Secretary of State for 6 years.
And that's of the great state of Arizona. I assume you knew John McCain.
I did, yes.
And you know, I don't know if you know Kerry Lake, but
I know Kerry a little bit, but not very well.
all right. Well, listen. So John and Ken, you'll be followed by Mimi, who's going to give us a report from LA. But John and Ken, can you tell us what's going on in the great state of Arizona, please?
Go ahead, John, please.
Go first, because he's closer to it than I am, being in the House and Senate and the legislature. So go ahead, Ken.
Well, I'm in pretty close contact with the election folks here in Yavapai County. That's the county north central Arizona. Things are going pretty smoothly. There is an issue statewide where about a month and a half ago, one of the counties, Maricopa County, where the Phoenix area is, reported that there was a apparent glitch in the motor vehicle division system over the last 20 years. And people who had driver's licenses in Arizona before 1996, as those licenses came up for renewal, they should have been showing documentation proving their citizenship. They would have attested that they were citizens prior to 1996. And I believe that most of them are, that the vast, vast majority, I believe, are. In fact, I think I'm probably in the group of 98,000, but there was a glitch. Apparently in 2004, the voters of Arizona passed a constitutional requirement requiring proof of citizenship in order to register to vote and get a driver's license. Voters before 1996 were kind of grandfathered in, but as they renewed their license, they were supposed to show that proof of citizenship. But somehow when they programmed the system over at Motor Vehicle Division, it assumed that everybody who had driver's licenses in 1996 and before had shown that proof. And so they weren't asked to show that again, or maybe for the first time when they renewed thereafter. But at about noon today, so 3 hours ago, the Secretary of State's office was supposed to release the file of that about 98,000 to the county recorders and to the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the members of the Election Committee. I am waiting for my notification as a member of the Senate Elections Committee. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Elections Committee in the Senate. I don't have any record yet that I've received my notification of that list, but since I do believe I'm on it, I'm anxious to see if I am. But aside from that, which unfortunately, some folks on the right, my own chairwoman of the committee, Wendy Rogers, she put out a tweet or whatever they call it now several weeks ago that, all 98,000 of these people must be illegals and they shouldn't be allowed to vote, when in fact, I think the exact opposite is true. But we will know in a matter of hours or day or two. The Supreme Court of the state has ruled that all of those 98,000 plus another 100,000 plus that they did the search a little different way. There might be 200,000, we're told. All of those folks are able to vote full ballots, federal and state and local races tomorrow, or have been, over the last 27 days. Arizona allows early voting 27 days before, and so we're getting down to the last day and a half here. So I'm in contact with county election folks around the state. Things seem to be going pretty smoothly. There's always issues that come up, but I think people are dealing with those. John, what are you hearing down in Pima County, which is the second largest block down around the Tucson area?
That everything's going to take longer because we did something pretty stupid in my book. We sent out 2 ballots to each voter. That means they have a 4-page ballot, okay? And that is going to take twice as long, okay? Maricopa County has fortressed their voting center. That if you had a truck with a bomb in it, you're not going to get in because you have to go through a concrete barricade, okay? Is that that there is concerns, and it's not a normal election. Like, you know, it's really no longer Republicans and Democrats. It's melting. Some Democrats are going with Trump. You know, I know that because I know a few. I'm not going to mention any names, but they might be related to me, okay? And kind of freak me out because there is a Kennedy effect. There is an effect that's happening from the guy who owns X, you know, Elon Musk, who's spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get Trump elected while he earns billions of dollars off of military contracts and things like that. It doesn't look good, okay? If Trump doesn't win, I'm afraid it could get really crazy. And that's where me and Ken are pretty pleased with this program we built called AID. And I'll be putting stuff out on the chat that people can pull it down. If you know Microsoft Office, if you know Excel, this is the most simplest program you'll ever run, and it's a beta. Because if things do get crazy out there, it's important that we go ahead and put pressure on both sides that there's a simple solution. Yes, the problems in elections are complicated, but the solution is simple, and it's called transparency. And Abe, by selecting 6 items, telling it where to pull the ballots and all of that, I did Dane County. I did that in like 40 minutes. Dane County, Wisconsin, 303,000 voters, 500,000 hyperlinks. Did it in 35 minutes and created 247 separate precincts. And having precincts are very important. I want to teach people how to climb a hill, not a mountain of data.
Well, John and Ken, are we seeing any violence or hints of violence at the polls?
Not yet. I'm very concerned that no matter which way the election goes, the polls seem to be indicating that Trump's maybe taking a little bit of a lead in Arizona. Kerry Lake, however, though, is upside down to Ruben Gallego for our U.S. Senate seat. So we could end up with a split scenario here. If that happens, it's going to be very hard for the loser in either one of those races to say, well, there was something fundamentally manipulated about the election when one of their guys wins and one of their guys loses. But the polls right now would seem to indicate that Trump might have a little bit of an edge in the president race in Arizona, but Gallego has a much more substantial edge in the U.S. Senate race. So, but there was a one-off situation in Maricopa County where a fire broke out in a ballot drop-off box down in Maricopa County, but they actually were able to find the person that did it, and he said he didn't do it for political reasons. He was recently released from prison and not doing well out on the street and wanted to get back in. So he wanted to break his parole somehow. So he lit a ballot box on fire and succeeded. So anyway,
So he's back in jail getting 3 squares.
there you go.
Oh,
But I am concerned that depending on how the state or how the countrywide vote goes, if Trump loses, I think there's elements on the far right that may resort to violence. If Trump wins, I think there's some on the left that might resort to violence. I think those on the left that would turn to violence, I think, are fewer in number than on the right. But either one would be a concern if it broke into violence. But I'm not saying anything definitive saying that that's what's going to happen in Arizona at this point. Things are going pretty smoothly.
Wow. So are there any lines at the polling stations, or is this all been taken care of by drop boxes and mail-in ballots?
I was in a meeting 2 days ago where somebody had just come from the main location in Yavapai County, the county headquarters, where one of the 17, or excuse me, one of the 7, I think it is, early voting locations was being held, and it's kind of the main one there at the county offices, county headquarters. They said the lines were out and around the block, even for early voting. Early voting ended Friday at 7 p.m. Anybody coming in today has to show an emergency. So Arizona has 3 groups of voting. There's early voting, which is 27 days before the election, up until the Friday evening before Tuesday election day. Then over the weekend, the whole election machine in each county, the infrastructure, I guess you would say, in each county kind of shifts to getting ready for election day voting on Tuesday. The one exception is that on Monday, Arizona statutes allow what's called emergency voting. So if somebody finds out on Saturday and Sunday that their business or the military or somebody is deploying them Tuesday morning and they're not going to be able to be at the polls, they can come in today, Monday, but they have to have a provable emergency, or they took ill and they're in the hospital or whatever. So today is what's called emergency voting. Tomorrow becomes at the poll voting on election day.
Wow. And is there any indication of any glitches? And do you anticipate a return of the ninjas in terms of the audit situation?
No,
Remember, everybody may remember 4 years ago, these lunatics showed up. They called themselves something ninjas. What were they?
cyber ninjas.
Cyber ninjas. And they just made a total disaster, which John and Ken and Ray Lutz really helped rectify. Are we looking at a replay again?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of proven in 2000 when Trump lost Maricopa County by about 45,000 votes. Or was it 40, John? 40,000, 45? Somewhere in that range. Trump won the rest of the states. The other 14 counties Trump won combined. I mean, there were some that he didn't win. He didn't win Pima County down around Tucson. He didn't win Coconino County up around Flagstaff, where Northern Arizona University is. But overall, Maricopa County is usually the focus of our elections in Arizona because about 62 to 65% of the voting population in Arizona is in Maricopa County, the Phoenix metro area. So in 2020, when Trump lost Arizona by about 10,500 votes statewide, he lost Maricopa County by 40,000. And so the Senate focused on confirming that that was correct. I think they unfortunately went at it from a presumption that it was inaccurate. But after months of hand counting 2.1 million ballots, actually it wasn't 2.1, it was 2,089,563 ballots. After hand counting 2,089,563 ballots, the ninjas confirmed that Biden didn't win Maricopa County by 40,000. He won by 40,350. So it was within a very narrow margin of difference between what the counties count with the machines had been the previous November, and then the auditors basically confirmed that that was the count the following July, I think it was, or September or something.
Wow, amazing. So but I assume that the Breaky Audit USA and your work have had some impact on how the election is going to wrap up in Arizona. I mean, are you confident we're not going to have armed militias in the streets, or are you worried about it?
Well, I'm worried about it, but I don't think the likelihood of that is for sure. I think there's a 10, 15% chance that some group of dummies thinks that the correct response to their candidate winning or losing is to, create some violence in the streets. As John and I have both said, I think that possibility, I don't think it's a probability. I think that possibility exists on both sides, unfortunately. I think the larger possibility is on the right. If Trump loses, I think there's going to be some people on the right that just cannot accept that. If Trump wins, I think there's going to be some people on the left that think we're headed for fascism and the ball game's over, and so they want to make a scene or something. But I hope neither one happens. But I think the possibility is unfortunately there.
So the other question becomes, given the way voting is done in Arizona, do you expect a red mirage and then a blue shift? In other words, early in when the way the voting has gone is the Republican vote is higher at the beginning, and then it diminishes through the night as the Democratic votes come in. That was
the reverse of that was the case in 2020, because Trump had told his people, don't vote early, vote at the polls. And so in 2020, as you may recall, when the first results, here's how the ballots are counted in Arizona. The early ballots that voters have returned to the counties by 5 o'clock on Friday before the Tuesday election, those are signature checked and have been being so for the last several weeks. Those are signature checked and run through the machines. You can't push the tally button yet, but those are the first batches of ballots that get released on usually about 8 o'clock after the polls have closed on Tuesday at 7 p.m. The first results are the early ballots that have been returned to the counties by the previous Friday. The next batch of ballots that are the results are reported are the ballots that people vote live on election day, handwritten ballots that go into the machines and get counted. Those are usually 9, 10, 11 o'clock election day night. Then the next group of ballots are the late earlies. If somebody shows up at the polling location on Tuesday and simply drops off their envelope with their mailed ballot in it, that goes into a box, doesn't even get signature checked and verified and opened and processed until Wednesday or Thursday. And then the last batch of ballots are the provisional ballots, where there was a difference on somebody's address or their signature didn't match. And sometimes that can take a week, because Arizona law allows 5 business days for the voter who has to have been notified by the county that your signature didn't match, your address or something. They have 5 days to come in, fix whatever the problem was, and those ballots get counted. Now, all ballots that are valid will be counted. The problem is that Arizona has been such a narrow swing state that when many other states are being called, definitively for one candidate or the other, Arizona's results have been so narrow. 10,000 votes out of 3.4 million votes 4 years ago, that when there's even 50 or 100,000 provisional ballots or those late arriving earlies. 4 years ago, Maricopa County had 400,000 ballots that were dropped off at the polls, mailed out. These were mail-in ballots, early ballots, mailed to the voters 29 days before. But 400,000 voters dropped them off in their envelopes at the polls on election day. They couldn't even be processed until the next day or two. So if these elections are tight again, and I assume that the president race in Arizona is going to be within a couple points, maybe, it could take 2 or 3 days before we can say definitively in Arizona somebody won. Now, critics will always say, Arizona, why can't you tell us who won? Because Florida already told us who won. Well, Florida can tell us who won on election night because Florida is usually decided by 10 or 15 points, or has been in the last couple election cycles. Ron DeSantis has been winning the governor's race down there by 10, 15, 20 points. And Rick Scott, that's going to be a little tighter. The president race, I think, was a clear victory for Trump 4 years ago. And so they could announce on election night somebody won Florida. But Arizona, we're going to have probably at least 1 or 2 races where it may take us a couple days.
Well, if it's within 10 points, is Donald Trump going to call your governor and ask her to find 11,422 votes?
Well, since our governor now is a Democrat, Katie Hobbs, I don't think there will be any calls from Donald Trump to anybody in Arizona this time. 4 years ago, we had a Republican governor, Doug Ducey, who infamously got a call from Trump while he was at the meeting with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General signing the statewide canvass. And I don't expect that's going to happen this year.
Well, it sounds very remarkably civilized in Arizona. We have 54 people with us, and Ken Bennett, you're still in the Senate, right?
Yes, I'm in the
Okay.
Senate. I was defeated in the primary back in late July. They sent a far-right MAGA guy up from the Tucson area and they raised him $350,000 of out-of-state money. He told about 5 or 6 vicious lies in every one of his hundreds of thousands of commercials that he ran with all that out-of-state money. And then every ad he pivoted to, he was endorsed by Donald Trump. So I was defeated in the primary, but I will serve until the new legislature takes their seats second Monday in January. So I'm still in the Senate, still vice chair of the Senate Education Committee. That's why I'm entitled to receive this list of those 98,000 voters that I'm looking forward to seeing if my name's on there.
Wow. Well,
After that,
thank you for being with us. John Brakey, go ahead.
I just want to say is Ken is an incredible human being. Okay. And the best thing I've ever done for what Arizona.
John, we got trouble with your audio.
140. What?
We got
Your
trouble
audio
with
broke up,
audio?
John.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, if that bill, if 140 passes, it is ranked choice voting, sort of. And it would lay out for a person who's highly respected. That's what ranked choice does. I mean, your first choice Democrats are going to vote for Democrats and Republicans are going to vote for Republicans. And then they got to check his second choice. Well, they're not going to pick a Democrat. I think they're going to pick somebody like Ken Bennett, both sides, because he's known for being a very much a politician that we all can respect. He's a statesman, is what he is. And just
Don't call me a politician, John. I want to be on my headstone. I want statesman, not politician, because I don't want to be in. I don't want to be in Mimi's group, the politician graveyard. I don't want to be in that group.
That's a memorable phrase.
I just want the listeners to know what he described was just perfect. Now, I want you to imagine Pennsylvania. We start counting 14 days, 16 days ahead of time, okay? At 7 o'clock, they push a button, okay? That's a blue tide. It was in 2020. In Pennsylvania, they don't start opening the envelopes until election morning. So they had a red tide. And when they say, oh my God, if you check 1 to 3 in the morning, that's when they stuffed the box. Well, the reality is that is when they started running the ballots they opened up. And they were heavily Republican is what they were, because Trump said, do not vote. And this time it's different. I'm glad to see that the numbers that are coming out election night will be a mix of both like they used to be. Because, you know, I used to be able to tell I would look at the vote by mail, and then I'd look at the precinct vote, and they usually would match hand to hand. And somehow it stopped happening. Did I get, my screen just went crazy.
Wow. Well,
I
listen,
think the
Ken Bennett,
engineer-
we know you got to go. Give us a last word if you would.
Yeah.
Well, I just want, of course, to encourage everyone to get out and vote. Call your friends and neighbors. I mean, on this call are people who are going to vote differently. But the most important thing is that elections are transparent, verifiable, and publicly verified. And John's system, Abe, I think we're going to continue to need tools like Abe. There are other systems that other states use to verify the elections. Maryland has a state contract with one company that after the individual counties in Maryland have counted the ballots on whatever system their board of supervisors chose to use, the county or the state has a contract to recount those ballot images on a different system. That's essentially what Abe is doing, or can do. And so Abe's very similar to a system that they use in Idaho, where you publish the ballot images and anybody can use a system like Abe to verify that the votes on each ballot are correctly recorded in the cast vote record. And I think we're going to continue to demand as an American people that level of transparency and verifiability. And my appreciation and love to John, Mimi, and others who have been helping him do this for 20 years. It's very important that no matter who wins or loses, we can tell somebody that it was done correctly.
Well, if the election goes decently this week, I'm going to propose to a publisher to write a book called How the Election Protection Movement Saved America. And we'll see if that actually turns out to be the case. Ken Bennett, we know you got to go. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you all. Thank you for your kind words, Mimi. I saw those.
Well, I want to turn now to Mimi. Thank you again, Ken. Well, please come next week as we pick up the pieces. I want to turn now to Mimi Kennedy, who's in Los Angeles. Mimi, you're in a picture next to John. You're the first person on this call to appear simultaneously in two screens, therefore proving the reality of quantum physics. But Mimi, if you could, you've done a really deep dive here into the system in Los Angeles. Can you tell us what you've found out, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Yeah, you're good.
Well, about many years ago, I was asked to be on a panel to plan a new voting system for LA because the one that we had was old punch cards, only we dotted them, and it had a lot of problems. So we wanted a paper ballot and we wanted it counted independently of any machine that made it. The disability rights community had insisted on having ballot marking devices, and we have 28 languages or more that we vote in California, in LA County, and we have 4 million voters. So we got these ballot marking devices, but they were built for LA. And you create a paper ballot, and it is selections only. You can read it. You can say, yeah, that's what I voted for before you cast your vote, your paper ballot. It is a QR code, by the way, that the scanner will read. And people are worried about that because you cannot read a QR code with the human eye. I have learned that I could scan the QR code with my phone, and it brings up a line of alphanumeric codes, and those codes matched all my choices on the ballot. So I verified that. Now I wanted to see how our ballots are handled now that we're at early voting for 2 weeks or more, and mail voting has exploded. Everyone in California is given a mail ballot automatically. So there's all these mail ballots for every voter in California. I wanted to know the chain of custody. So
Here's mine. Here's mine, mail-in
there
ballot.
you go. Well, you want to get that in. You want to
Yeah,
get
I'm gonna do it today.
Okay, great. Okay,
But
so
you know, I'm voting in Yiddish, so I gotta. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't wonder if there isn't Yiddish on the ballot, but the QR code will tell you what your scans with. Anyway, I know about vote casting now, and I am content that it's a good system in LA. It's human readable, that ballot. You can always hand count it. All the languages have a little bit of English next to them. So if the person counting doesn't speak Tagalog or whatever they're counting, they can see the English. Also, the LED, I mean, the QR code is verifiable. I trust it. Now, the scanners went down and I looked at the operation. Do you have these pictures, John, so that people can see what I'm talking about? And do you want
to put me back on the screen?
Can you get back up?
Back up, and I have the pictures here waiting for you.
Okay, thanks.
So you're doing digital scanning here?
Yeah, they're doing, here's the new setter. This is a bag in which the Dropbox ballots arrive. They're picked up at 11 p.m. every night, sometimes more. There's always 2 people in the vehicle. You can't be one person in the vehicle. They come in these bags. The bags have locks on them. And there's the lock. This one's undone because the bag's been opened. The bag is empty. That's a Dropbox bag. Okay. This is where the ballot library is going to be stored. All of the paper ballots get put after tally in boxes. They're batches. They're not by precinct, because vote centers, you can go from any precinct in California, in LA, you can go to a vote center and vote your ballot that day. So these BMD ballots, this is a tally box, and they will get 3 labels on them with data that is searchable by a computer to find exactly where the number ballot is that matches a ballot image in what box. So these will all be, it's like a library. You can go and find a particular ballot, a ballot batch, whatever. These are the tally boxes. They'll hold 1,000 ballots after they're tallied. This is a helipad. It was just interesting. It's on a screen. This is the press room. This is a dog sniffing because they are worried about interruption of the process if somebody opens a mail ballot and something spills out. So they're having toxic sniff dogs look at all the mail ballot things that arrive from the post office.
What happens if somebody smokes pot while they're filling out their ballot? Is the dog
I
gonna
don't think the
sniff
dog
that one
gives a
down?
shit about pot. They're looking for
Okay.
Okay. So then this you can see that what's snagged, provisional is snagged because they didn't see the voter as being on the LA rolls. They'll have to contact the voter, or maybe the signature didn't match. They'll have to contact the voter, come in and cure it. Via BM, these are vote by mail ballots that have come in damaged. The scanner couldn't read it. A human will read that. VBM snag, again, it's probably an envelope snag. They'll have to contact the voter. But it's incredibly organized. As you can see, the entire space, it used to be a Fry's electronics store. It's completely operations transparent, and the chain of custody is obvious to everybody from the time it gets off the truck with the 2 people or the helicopter. And by the way, sheriff people are involved now because there's been so much threat of violence that this tabulation center is being watched.
People have been threatening the electoral process with violence?
Yeah,
In
and
LA?
things like ricin. I mean, we're gonna shut the whole thing down because you're gonna be afraid that something's happening. Yeah, Dean Logan said they've been, you know, elections officials are being told what the threats are. And the thing I was really impressed with is how locked down and yet transparent to the public. There's a place you can view the scanner. They took me all the way through here. Of course, I couldn't touch anything, but the chain of custody of the paper is really good. And now the chain of custody, that's what matters. The digital stuff that's going on, let's describe that, John, because this is the part that you really wanted to see.
We should, Stefan has the video because it's a really incredible, and then what happened when she was there was spectacular. Stephen, do you have it? Can you play?
Okay, we don't usually play videos, but this is a rare exception. You guys can talk in. If Steve, you got it, go ahead. And
This is, I videoed the scanner. This is counting ballots right now. Is it gonna go? This is
I
the
don't know why I
scanner.
haven't pressed the.
There
There
it
we
is.
go.
Okay, that's how fast. And on that screen are the ballot images. And all these, they go down there, and this person's going to put them in a tally box. Every single paper ballot is stamped with an ID number that matches the ID number of the ballot image that's coming up on that screen really fast. So you can look at a ballot image, get that number, and find the number in the box. You can match ballot to ballot images. And Dean Logan agreed with me that someday the statistical audit, the risk limiting audit, will be to make sure that the digital image file was not compromised because there's a statistical match to the source paper.
well, here's a question. Can someone identify who cast what ballot?
No, nope. These are all anonymous. These ballots have been separated from any envelope. Of course, at the BMD center, you know, a BMD ballot leaves the, you check it and it's the paper, and then you press a button and it casts into a transparent ballot box on that BMD. And then it's never connected to a human again, except for the talliers. These come out of envelopes by extraction, which is a process by which it's removed from the envelope and put into a box to prepare for going in the scanner.
So,
this-
we got an email here in the chat from Murray Smart, quote, in Minnesota, it was reported today in the Minnesota Star Tribune that law enforcement at all levels of government are working to make sure all polling places are safe and secure for voters and voting officials. Now, is that happening in LA?
I would assume that it is. I'm only looking at the tabulation center now, and I voted by mail, so I haven't been to a vote center. But Dean Logan, who I did get to talk to on this day, along with some press
Dean
people,
Logan is the head of election
the
board
head of
in
elections in
LA.
LA County, and he helped plan this system, which LA County owns. We didn't go with any vendor from the outside, and the principles established for this, I was on the committee for that. It will be open source someday. It isn't right now, but as I say, chain of custody and digital security, I am satisfied. And the matching of the two in an audit, I am satisfied. And then John Brakey has been talking about ballot images all these years. And I asked Dean long ago, do you know about ballot images? He said, yes, our new system is definitely going to have them. And not only do we have them, but you can see them on the screen as an observer being made from all these paper ballots, and that they're being stamped and, matched with the paper ballot by ID alphanumeric code.
Well, we do have Bob Petrakis on the call, one of the great heroes of having done this after the horrendous experience in Ohio 2004. That really. So, would you, John, and would you, Mimi, say that there has been significant improvement in the system in Los Angeles and in Arizona since, say, 2016?
Absolutely.
100% improvement in LA.
Absolutely. It's a different age than when I started 20 years ago. I knew the debolt system was bad because I was a beta test site in Mexico for Briggs and Stratton and Mercury Marine. And guess what? We were using the same platform, and I knew the back doors, and it was really freaky. I used to walk around and demonstrate how I could flip an election in a minute. And I would say they're using spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are great devices, but what do you want it to be? Without the images, I don't trust the spreadsheet.
Right.
And so we need, and the redundancy that Mimi just brought out. Hey, Mr. Grifter, if you think you can rig it, remember the county has the original ballot and it's married to an image, and the image is hashed. And if you change one little thing, we can tell. And people need to realize voting is the secret sauce process, okay? Voted is a public record. Once it separates from your fingers, it's anonymous. And maybe somebody could match up a couple of records because of something. So instead of saying, oh, cars kill people, let's ban cars, let's make sure that it's safe. And anybody who would take two records and try to combine them and out a person is committing a felony. But do what Mongolia does. They release everything online. They have the highest belief in their system in the country. I mean, the world. 98% of the people in their country say, hey, we trust our elections because they can add it up themselves.
Do people know John is talking about, and Dean Logan said this may come up, it may happen in LA too. The ballot image file, which is all the digital pictures of every voted ballot, which you saw being made there in that scanning video. The ballot image file should and could be public record. Once it is, anybody with a computer program that could count all the votes the same way the county does from those ballot images could rerun the election on their computer and see what kind of results they come up with. You have to know the ballot image file has not been compromised, and that's what I hope all the counties will eventually do as a risk limiting audit. Here's the ballot image, go get the ballot, see if it matches. Any grifter would have to have changed the ballot image, which I believe Cyber Ninjas was trying to learn to do because they were taking pictures during that stupid recount. And then they stopped taking pictures. They went, oh, we don't need to take pictures. I'm sorry. We have 100,000. We'll stop now. I think they wanted something to play with like a child. Can we change ballot images? But if they were able to do that, they'd have to go in that ballot image library I just showed you, those long, long stacks, and go in and find the one ballot or the 10 that they just changed. Come on, it would take all night. It would be a huge conspiracy, and it's not going to change an election. You can't get it done to shift the results the way you used to be able to do. And I'm sure Bob will talk about this, when all you had to do was go and manipulate some digital data. That's all you had to do in the old days. This is different, 100% different, to answer your
So
question.
you're saying that anybody with a PC, if the ballot images are made public, can do a vote count?
Yes, they can, but
It's a little
only,
complicated, but yes, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
but it would be by precinct, because that's the whole purpose of Abe, is to take the data. I run it twice, one with just one sheet, and then I insert it into precincts, because, hey, it's the easiest thing. And we want the images that once you get the CVR through the internet, you can pull down all 800 images in that precinct, or whatever. Or you can pick 1, 10, 20, 30
But you won't
randomly,
be,
then you verify.
and you won't
wanna
be
know
able to
if the data is
identify,
real.
you won't be able to identify who cast which ballot.
No,
Nope.
no, they used to
Okay.
worry about, in this precinct, only 3 people signed in, and there's 3 ballots. And I know Aunt Marge voted Democrat, so the other 2 people were Republican. I mean, no. And also what John's talking about, we don't vote, we absolutely have to vote our precinct ballot, because depending on where we live, we have a different congressman, state assemblyman, state
All right.
senator. Remember,
Fire
so many
department.
races that are very important to the candidates and to us are precinct based. So John's talking about taking this an enormous amount of data and just going, just choose out all the precinct number, just choose out precinct 9067 right now. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Now you've got the ballot images for that precinct and the cast vote record for that precinct, and you can verify.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're honored. You two are two of the great, and Bob is on the call. You two are been at the core of the election protection movement for all these years. Back in the days when John had hair and I had teeth. So, they're really the previous century. So this is fantastic. Really, really quite amazing, actually, a revolution in the reliability of our elections. We got Paul Newman, who votes in Santa Monica, I believe. Paul, did you want to jump in and ask Mimi and
Yeah.
John a question?
Yeah, I have two questions. First of all, hi, Mimi, good to see you again. I was curious if they're still counting the votes in Norwalk, correct?
Here's what I wanted to say about that. They're scanning. You saw the scanner, right?
Right.
Well, they're making the ballot images. On 8 o'clock election night, they press a button that says tabulate. And then within minutes, the ballot images are used to count the vote. That's why they're such an important election. Within minutes. And then
Okay.
that's first results.
At the Peace Center,
Yeah.
we had Logan come down and talk to us about the new system.
Yep.
And a lot of the people were upset because there was an internet connection to the Norwalk tabulator. And we were concerned about that, where they could, it's easy to see you voted through the ballot initiative, but the question is obviously you mentioned that there's a safeguard to that now, I would presume, but I don't know.
When did he speak?
This is in 2016.
Okay, I think I remember that.
They revamped it and found all the, that vulnerability.
Yeah.
The tabulation is where the vulnerability would lie if they're connected to the internet.
They're not.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say this about that. That is always my big fear. And I
Right.
just want to say quickly, Maricopa County only allows machines out in the field only on election day. Everything else from early voting comes in through an envelope, okay? And when they put those machines out there, when they get the data back that day, they do not load the data in the machine, and they have to load it by drives, okay? Until they back up their system, because they're afraid their virus could be come in. So they want to know that they got it backed up. And there's absolutely no wiring connecting into their system because, you know, I sued Maricopa 7 to 8 times over 20 years. And Pima County, same thing, about 6 times probably. And so all the wiring is exposed. You can walk around the whole room, follow every wire. It used to be through walls, and it made me crazy because I didn't know if they had an device in the wall. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
And
Paul, I
so that's
what
what's happening here. And this is a super system that way.
talking about.
But like I said, a cast vote record database without the ballot images.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I
the
don't trust
thing.
it.
That's why the paper to the image is so important because, you know, if
To
images
protect each
look
other.
weird, you can't duplicate an image as John said, it's hashtag or hashed. So that would look weird digitally. And then if there were a question, you go to the paper ballot. But
Mhm.
I'm wondering, I wish I'd been around to ask Dean that question at that just recently. But after all of this chain of custody and all this care that they've taken to have their thing connected to the internet would be insane. I'm
Yeah.
quite sure that that isn't even a vulnerability, let alone a built-in thing.
So,
Right.
and percentage wise, how much better is the voting situation in Arizona and and LA than it was 4 years ago?
I would say in Arizona, I think that there's a lot more attention being paid to details. Okay, and I think that the only big screw up we're going to have is what the hell are they doing with the second ballot? Why so much on there on the voter? Okay, it's going to create longer waits. Listen, Maricopa may not be done counting everything for 7 days. You know, the first election I ever did was in 2004. And, you know, CNN reported Arizona is one of the worst states for voting. Do you know 10 days later, we were one of the best? That
So,
disturbs me.
Maricopa is a huge county, right? I think it's the
Second largest in the
Yeah.
country, behind LA.
Yeah. Well,
And I think
okay.
it's one of the best election departments in the country at this moment. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it.
The guy who's
Adrian
there now, who
Fontes.
didn't get reelected, and because of Fontes and because of Ken
Yeah.
Bennett and me being, you know, a nice guy who likes to, you know, file your risk of mandamus acts. You know, please
Okay.
follow the law. You cannot destroy public records.
I will
Well,
say
listen,
that
we're almost at the top of the hour. We're going to keep going here because this is really critical stuff. And, you know, everybody on this call is going to be reading about Arizona and reading about LA. Because, you know, the word, of course, is that KAMALA will carry out California, but there are 7 congressional toss-up seats in California.
that's
The
right.
control of the U.S. House could actually hinge on California.
Yes.
So it's very, very critical. Myla Reese, and go ahead, please, Myla.
Thank you, and thank you for this really informative discussion. I I happened to be at the Peace Center with Paul Newman when we met with Dean Logan way back when, and there had been a mathematician who had circulated an analysis of the vulnerabilities. So I'm hoping that they were taken care of, but that's not why I raised my hand initially. I want to know, I think it was at our last meeting, I mentioned that when I looked at my mail-in ballot, I was reticent about submitting it because I was afraid that if my signature had changed, because it said my signature was supposed to match the signature that I signed on my registration years ago, would I have to go to Norwalk to cure that ballot? That's my question.
Well, you would if it didn't match, but here's what I found out at the tabulation center from the people and sitting in front of those screens doing extraction, which is processing. If it doesn't match your register, they actually bring up the latest signature that the county has for you. And it's usually your DMV license renewal or vehicle renewal. It's something, the most recent, and that's what it brings up now. the voter's most recent signature on file with the county. Because of course, they realized that the signature we did when we registered, those of us who've been voting for years, we don't even know what that was. So I was really happy. There are very few, you saw that batch, it was probably VBM, snagged. Those probably will have to be cured by the voter. And they probably, well, I don't know what the process is. Do they send them another ballot and destroy it? Do they ask them down to the tabulation center? All I know is the voter has a chance. And you should rest assured that if you've renewed a license or anything with the county for the last, it'll be that signature that will verify your ballot.
Wow. We have
You know,
another LA voter,
tomorrow-
Kat Kramer's on the call with us. Hi, Kat. Speak up if you like, another LA voter. We have Tatanka Bricka, the erstwhile chair of the KPFK board, and Lynn Feinerman's with us. We have 50 people. Keep going. Paul Stokes, go ahead, please. Paul?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Harvey. Hey, this is a great discussion. And it looks to me like the system described for Arizona and or Los Angeles. I'm not sure if they're both very similar or how it was, but
The whole country now.
great systems. They're great systems. I approve of all of them. I did have kind of a theoretical question, and it's related to the ballot images. I'm not sure who can view those ballot images, but people have always been concerned, I think mostly theoretically, but and not practically, but people have concerned that the ballot can be marked in some way that will prove how you voted, or there's pattern voting where you have a code of the let's say the ballot of the various people. If you do it in a very patterned way, that proves to somebody who's trying to pay for the ballot, pay the voter for his ballot voting. And so, can anybody look at this thing for this, or how do you prevent that? Or
State to state is the deal, but I want to get back to what you just said, okay? Gee, somebody wants to buy your vote, right? Okay.
Right.
Well, did you know that in the state of California and in Arizona, a lot of states, you can take a picture of your ballot and you can hold it right next to your face, okay? And secondly, gee, they're going to wait till after the election and you expect to get paid, okay? Don't work that way, okay? It's a pretty, if it's happening, like you said, take a picture, or he can come by the back door and pay you $100 and you can sell your ballot to him and he'll fill it out, okay? That's the only way, but you don't know. These are some of the things that people put out because they don't understand how the system works, and they don't realize the value of having elections that are really accountable to the people. Listen, in this election, I will produce right now and say there will be at least 60 million people in this country who are not going to go out and vote. Last time it was 80 million. So maybe we'll pick up another 10 or 20 million, okay? The real way to get people involved in elections is to prove them that it's real. That's what they really want. Mark Twain may have been right. If voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. And that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
We have to change that mentality.
It has,
will-
Because our country is in severe crisis. Thank you.
Hey,
Elon Musk stopped by the house earlier today with a big check, but we turned him away.
You did.
Yeah.
I want to take
Oh, I
this
sent him to you, Steve.
to say hi to Mimi Kennedy.
Yes,
I
Paul.
worked with Mimi back in
Yeah.
the early 2000s.
2005, I
going
think.
through these kinds of processes in New Mexico. And it's really good to see you again.
Yeah, I
Well,
feel
you-
the same way, Paul. Excellent. I know it seems like yesterday or 1,000 years ago, but we built something very good.
Well, we're at the point now where people have been working on this for a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I got involved in election protection because Bob Fitrakis pointed out to me that the election was being stolen in Columbus. That was 20 years ago. For
What a-
God's sakes,
What a great
what a
book.
ride it's been. And this report from you two and from Ken Bennett is very reassuring. It's really great to hear it. But I've been hearing some disturbing reports about election stripping, and a lot of them coming from Greg Palast,
Yeah.
who I talked to
That's-
earlier.
You know,
But
I just want to say, Harvey, now that the tabulation of the votes is gotten so much better and that is verifiable because there's paper, the game by the grifters has switched to don't let them vote. You have to prevent those paper ballots from being generated by stopping the ability of certain voters in certain places to cast a paper ballot. Once that paper ballot is cast, at this point, our election system is much better. At least it's verifiable. Even if they cheat the first time digitally, then you go and you count the paper ballots. It's verifiable. But I'll say so that's why there's so much voter suppression and trying to strip the voter rolls. The voter rolls have they were kind of fat when I checked them in LA. But that was in 2006, maybe 2005. They were cleaned up. There were a lot of dead people. But I wanted to say that the one concern I have, but the early voting has been happening and it has not been a problem. We have electronic sign-in poll books. And if the electric poll books go down, you can't generate the blank ballot for the BMD. Voting basically stops. I don't know what they do then. That's why everybody in California gets a paper ballot. So at least there's that. I should have asked Dean, what happens if they go down? And one thing that could happen is you go to another vote center, which would not be far away on election day. You can register on election day if you've been kicked off the rolls in California, but that's not possible everywhere else. If you come and try to sign in, they go, you're not on the rolls, Mimi. I can go over and register and cast a ballot. And that's a conditional ballot that will be counted probably a couple of days after everything else, not everything else, a couple of days after election day, because they have to verify that I live at that address and that I am an LA voter and it was okay to count my ballot. I just
Well, of
wanted
course,
electronic.
when we succeed in the next 4 years in totally solarizing the country and having battery backups everywhere, there won't be any electric blackouts. I mean, we have the technology, and we're going to do this over the next 4 years because the Olympics are in LA in 28 and we want them totally solarized, but we do have the technology to never have another blackout.
That's right. So then it's just a matter of the digital software, which it does have to check with the county some things about your registration. And it's a closed network, whatever you call it, a VPN. And again, we worried a lot about its vulnerability when the system went into place, and they've secured it. Is all I can say.
Does what you're saying about LA
it's just
work for the whole state? Or is it just LA?
No, it's just LA. And like Shasta County, those people going, let's only do hand counting, and which is something many of our friends have advocated for years. And at this point, hand counting gets to be a bit of a problem because it's who's counting the votes, and is there any redundancy, and is there any other way that these votes are being tabulated, or is it just you and your buddies counting the ballots?
When we started in Ohio 2004, we were adamant that we wanted hand-counted paper ballots.
Precisely,
but then John Brakey introduced the idea of digital scanning, and that really took us up a level.
It did,
So,
because it
It's
allowed
upper level, but I never did. I mean, I like hand counting, and but I like a hybrid system because I want to do both.
I want to do both.
Verifying and using your own eyes to prove what you just saw is real. Do you see what I'm saying? And is it in the database right? And then you're pushing another button, it adds it up. And then you push another button, it deep dives it. It's incredible.
Redundancy. You can't, don't rely on just digital, and don't rely on just somebody go, we'll count these votes. You shouldn't be afraid of redundancy. And
it's the Department of Redundancy Department.
Yes.
I like that.
Okay. Mike Hirsch. Mike, you got a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. You made a quip, Sluggo, about Elon Musk dropping by to buy your ballot or something. He is in court now, not him personally, but his representation. And I just wanted to point out, his lawyers are claiming that the vote lottery that he was doing was not a lottery because they had picked the winners in advance. You can't
That's
make
good.
this up.
That's reassuring.
That is just unreal.
No, he's bringing apartheid politics to the United States. That's what he grew up
Certainly
with.
is.
So, yeah, that's not what we need.
It's truly astounding. But this is really this report from Ken Bennett, John Breaking, and Mimi Kennedy is really it's the result of 20 years of work. I mean, you know, if there's a decent result in this election, it will be because after Florida 2000, where Greg Palast and Bev Harris were the only people to point out what was really going on in terms of a theft. And we did have a coup d'etat in Florida 2000. There's no doubt about it. The Brooks Brothers mob, whose legal representation included John Roberts, Brent Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, all of whom are now on U.S. Supreme Court, they physically stopped the counting of the ballots in Broward County, Florida, and they made George W. Bush president of the United States. It was a coup d'etat, and because Greg Palast reported on the stripping of the voting rolls, and Bev Harris reported on the fluctuations with the voting machines, you know, that was the seed of a movement. And then in 2004, when Bob Petrakis pointed out to me and others how the election was being stolen, you know, we moved ahead. Thank God we had a website, freepress.org, which we still had, which was the only place in America that was reporting on the theft of the election in Ohio 2004. And that's when we started advocating hand-counted paper ballots, because the machines were clearly corrupted. And then John came in with the digital scanning, and here we are today. We can say at least a couple of, well, one state and one county will have verifiable voting, and I'm sure many other states now we will be able to trust the results. Where there was in 2004, there was nowhere in the United States that you could really trust the outcome, because the majority of the votes were being cast on digital machines, which are absolutely hackable, and that's not the situation now. So thank you guys for that. Steve Kaiser, you want to jump in? We are going to talk about the election in a minute in terms of expected outcomes, and we will meet again on Thursday to pick up the pieces and see where we stand, and people will check to see if they have their passports and where we're all going to go or otherwise.
Harvey, I wanted to mention
Steve
I wanted
Kaiser.
to mention something about the 2000 election. It was something about protecting George W. Bush's rights. And that was what got Sandra Day O'Connor to become the fifth vote and to select Bush as the presidency. It was something to the effect of protecting his rights, and they would use that as a reason to stop the count in Florida. So they abrogated the rights of 330 million or 300 million, how many we were at that time, Americans, to protect George W. Bush's individual rights in that election. And that's what tipped the balance by Sandra Day O'Connor.
How that came about, because the Al Gore campaign had only asked to recount certain counties, and that they said violated equal protection of George Bush's rights to have the entire state of Florida counted. So that was the wrong ask, and now it's too late. The election needs to be certified, and so whoever's winning right now, is it George W. Bush? He gets it because you asked the wrong question and you violated his rights to have the entire state counted. I
hope that we win this election and they don't have room to pull any legal maneuvers on us again. Just to be.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. We are going to get to that, Steve. So
I
stick
just
with
wanted
it.
to say that Kamala Harris's election as Attorney General took 3 weeks
Oh,
to
dear.
adjudicate, because at the time, California's voting system in LA had too many provisional votes, because if you got a mail ballot and you wanted to vote at the polls and you didn't bring in that mail ballot to surrender, you had to vote provisional. There were something like 400,000 provisional votes across California in that election. It was neck and neck. And she won, I think, 3 weeks later. And we had observers going down there to watch the provisional count, because it's never audited. The provisional scans, even back then, 400,000 ballot scans were never going to be audited. They were never going to be part of the audit. So the best we could do is just let people know we were watching. And the only time I've met that woman, Kamala Harris, I said to her, "Hi, I'm Mimi Kennedy," and we sent teams down to, and she interrupted me and she went, "I know who you are and I know exactly what you did. Thank you."
Wow.
He gets it. And when she was Attorney General, she always let us election people into her office to warn about counties that were vulnerable, where we thought something was going to go wrong. She always understood it. I just wanted to say that, because for the 20 years we've been at this, very few public officials really appreciated what we were doing, and she did.
Well, can I ask you a personal question? Is that smile of hers for real?
Yep.
Okay, just checking. Lynn Feinerman, go ahead.
Great. That was a great anecdote, Mimi, about Kamala. One of the things I'm really concerned about, because nobody is paying much attention to it, is that first of all, the judges in Georgia have ruled that no ballots can be counted after Election Day. What does that do with all the ballots that are postmarked Election Day, but that are delayed? And
I think that was overturned, Lynn.
I'm sorry?
I think that was overturned.
Right. I understand that it was overturned, but there is still a problem of delay through the postal office and the postal workers. I just put in the chat a bit of a post that I got from Demand Progress, and I'm very concerned that the votes that are postmarked Election Day but don't arrive will never be counted.
I am too. And I'm also concerned about Dropbox ballots that never get a postmark and don't have trackability the way ours do in California. You know, they'll go, well, this arrived after the election. There's no postmark. We track our mail ballots, and they're time-stamped when they come in. Once they're they're time-stamped when they come in. So we know. I am very afraid the Republican lawyers are going to be all over the unpostmarked ballots.
Well, that was an issue in Pennsylvania. That certainly was raised in Pennsylvania, and I don't know what the ruling has been on that. So, you know, this is a nightmare.
That's right.
If I could add one thing before we close, a point that I want to make is that, you know, we've talked earlier about things can get a little crazy out here, okay? And we're talking about ballots over bullets. We need to have candidates and people realize that Abe exists. And it's an arbitrator. It's a hybrid. We need candidates after the election to say, you know, I'm filing a public records request, and I don't need to tell you why I want them, but I want to explain. I want to explain that cynicism is destroying our country. We've lost faith in our democracy. And you know, those ballot images and the cast vote records could be very valuable. And I want you to supply me that I can run Abe, that I will produce it if you don't, okay, into a precinct level. And let's prove to the American people that we have a democracy that we can believe in and that there is no Wizard of Oz. Because, you know, in creating this system and creating these macros that do this, we could have created a macro that said every 10th vote for Harris, change it to Trump or vice versa, okay? But on the other hand, if that person did that and I had the images, I could tell he did that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, what's new now is, thanks to your work.
People, please take this stuff, download it. It's a simple program.
Right.
It's so simple and blow your mind. Learn how to do it that you can tell people.
Well, the big step forward we've taken. The big step forward we've taken because of the work of the election protection movement, which is culminated with you two guys, is that the two biggest counties in the country, You know, there are almost as many people in LA County as there are in Ohio. And
Oh,
in Maricopa is that we have systems now that actually work. And that we did not have a model of a working system in 2004. It was total chaos. And nobody had an answer. Hand counted paper ballots were the key, but again, the scanning, digital scanning took us to a whole other level of accountability. The digital scanning is more accurate than the hand counting. So,
we
you
needed
know,
paper ballots to
that's
have, yeah.
so here we are. We have a model going forward. Let's just hope we have a democracy to use it in. And we're going to talk about that a little today and then in great depth on Thursday after the vote. Steve Caruso, please.
Yeah, the Musk case, the judge just ruled that it's okay for him to continue through the election making these payments, and that the people who win are spokespersons for Musk. And then there's another, he comes up with another slimy excuse, it seems, that it's okay, the lawyers for Musk, that is. So, you know, double down on the garbage. That's what they tend to do when they're faking it through the legal system here. And some judge bought it. So,
Well, it'll get
that's-
appealed, I hope. But you know, I talked earlier to Greg Palast in Georgia, and he says it's really bad. A lot of violence, and you know, it's too bad he's not joining us, but he's doing fine. We'll talk to him hopefully on Thursday. We're gonna meet Thursday, same time, same locator code here, and we want to see where we're going. So, John and Mimi, let's move now. We're not going to go all the way to the top of the hour. We want people to be making phone calls. I've been making phone calls into North Carolina. You know, there are a lot of bad numbers and stuff like that, but I do get to leave messages, and all I'm saying is remember that to vote. That's it. I mean, I got a long script from the great Andrea Miller, but I'm just saying hi. I just want to remind you that voting ends tomorrow, July, whatever month it is, November 5th. And please go out and vote. And if you need a ride, call the NAACP. So it takes me less than a minute to leave a message. And I chose North Carolina because I personally have thought that North Carolina would be the key state this year. We don't know. Mila, you had a hand, and then I want to go to a general discussion. We are nonpartisan here. This is a nonprofit, but you can be as partisan as you want. And I do want to talk about and what we expect in terms of the outcome of this election. Mila, go ahead.
Thanks, Harvey. I wanted to mention that I saw in the chat that Kat Kramer's with us, and she said that she's been making a lot of calls in these past few days. So I'm hoping maybe we can hear from her a report about what she's experiencing making calls.
That would be
But
great.
when we pivot to talking about the outcome, I would like to discuss Ann Seltzer and the amazing work that
Yes.
she accurate polling.
Right.
So I'd like to get to that.
Thank you for that, Maya. Very, very good. Kat Kramer, do you want to report? Anybody else who's been making phone calls, if you want to report?
Yeah, sure.
That would be
I
great.
I don't have my video today, just audio. So I'm
That's
just
fine. That's fine.
I've been doing a
You
lot
look
of
great,
phone
though, by the way.
banking. Thank you. And yesterday all day calling Pennsylvania, and there's just been, and also California. I was phone banking for Jane Fonda Climate PAC for the past whenever, I can't even count how many weeks. And in California, there were so many hangups. I actually got a couple Trumpers. These were numbers that they were registered Democrats or the Green Party. And then a lot of people seemed disinterested. There were a few that were very strong for all the climate champions that are up and down ballot. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't all just for Harris Walz. It was for other candidates. But yesterday was primarily for Harris Walz, and it was from Team Harris Walz through Democrats.org, and it was only Pennsylvania. And there was a few there that didn't even know when the voting deadline was. I was really shocked about that. Some that said that they'd already voted and they were very strong supporters. Others said, please don't bother me again or I'll switch my vote to Trump. I got one of at least one of those. But it's been very different this election because I've done this before. I've done knocking on doors, canvassing in the past. The phone banking has just been daunting in some ways, but also there's a lot of, I have opened a lot of eyes to really pay attention to voting. And there were a number of individuals that said they just weren't voting at all this year, and there was nothing I could do to change their minds.
Wow.
So,
well, I
there's
got
just a lot of different candidates, like in the, District 35, and just mostly it's been California. And I was really, really only somewhat pleased with the reactions. A lot of people seem so tired of hearing about it that they don't want to even listen to what I had to say. And we did have scripts, we had scripts that we had to stick to, and sometimes it was a little confining. But with Jane Pack, yeah, she's had a lot of, we've all been very dedicated to making these calls on a daily basis.
Wow, good for you. Good for you.
Thank you.
I
But
had
it
one
is
guy.
concerning. It is concerning. I have to say that with the reaction.
Uh-huh. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about it. Thank you, Kat. That was really great. And we look forward to the Atomic Film Festival whenever you guys decide to do
Oh,
it.
yes, yeah.
And
That will happen. That will
we
definitely happen.
are
It just
hoping
might.
to get our hippie film nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. Well,
Amy will help us with that. We call
I
it the Naked
will.
Hippie Movie. Anybody want? There's only very brief, ask times of frontal nudity. Anybody wants to ask me about it, you can email me, solartopia@gmail. But we sure did look a lot better back then. Anyway, Lynn Feinerman, you have a hand, and then we're going to talk about how we think things might go. Thank you again, Kat. That was great.
Yes, I did the Callapalooza with Andrea Miller yesterday for hours and hours, and the only responses I got were, and they were all BIPOC, they were all people of color, they were all women, youth. So I felt really good about working in that system, and I didn't get any, kinds of don't bother me, I'm voting for the rump or anything like that. One of the things that was really interesting today is our program called How Project 2025 Will Ruin Your Life aired on the Women's Magazine on KPFA, and there was a discussion afterward, a live call-in. Almost every single person who called in said, why are we not talking about a third party? Why are we not talking about third parties? We don't want KAMALA because of what she did about the Middle East, and we hate Trump for everything he is. That kind of interested me. I was very intrigued when you had Swap Your Vote on. And I tried to push it to a number of people who wanted to vote for Stein, in California. Not very successfully. So I wonder if anybody else got any kind of response like that doing calling. Thanks.
Well, I did actually. I got a guy by mistake. He was in South Carolina. I always thought I was calling North Carolina, and he said he voted for Jill Stein, but he was in favor of nuclear power. He apparently didn't know that Jill Stein was a Green or what that was supposed to mean. And as you know, the European Greens denounced her and said that people should vote for Harris. I know Jill Stein from years. I will tell you that she's been really assaulted by the Democrats. They really went after her for some funding issues with the Green Party. It was highly disturbing what they were doing to her, and she was really angry, and I don't blame her. But we'll see. Steve Caruso, and then I want to talk about one aspect of the voting that I think everybody should take a look at. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I get so involved with the program. Forgot
Okay.
what I was gonna say, but yeah, the Jill Stein thing was maybe what it was. I don't know. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, let me raise one issue. All the polls, and this Iowa poll that came out showed Kamala Harris winning Iowa by 3 points, which shocked everybody because it's completely come out of the blue, as to make a pun, and nobody expected Kamala to be even competitive in Iowa. And here's the basic theory of a Kamala victory. And again, I'm being nonpartisan here. All the polls, without exception, say that the majority of the voters in this election will be women, about 53 to 47. That's how many more women will vote than men. And all the polls show that Kamala Harris has a massive lead among women. So, 1 + 1, when Meyer Lansky was interviewed to be the accountant for the mafia, they asked him, what is 1 + 1? And he said, whatever you want it to be. And so in this case, we have a majority of women voting who are a clear majority for Harris. Why wouldn't she win the popular vote? And the Iowa poll is the first one, I think, that indicates that maybe that's what's going to happen. I don't know. John, you're telling us that you think Trump will carry Arizona. I don't know. The appraisal I heard from Greg Palast earlier is that Trump has been clearly courting young white men, right? Anybody looking at his last campaign appearances, I would like another week of Donald Trump on the stump, frankly. I mean, you can't improve on what he's been doing in these live rallies. But and Greg Palast, to speak for him, I think he'll be okay. He doesn't think young white men are going to vote.
I agree.
And that's why, but young white women will. And I would have to say that the Harris campaign has done at least on the ads that I've seen, has done a masterful job of courting women. Starting with Saturday Night Live. I mean, that was an astoundingly feminist presentation that she made with her doppelganger there. So, Myla, did you want to say something, please?
I do. I just wanted to point out, and we're very disappointed about it, but the running mate that was selected to run with Jill Stein, her vice presidential running mate, is anti-choice and a horrible anti-trans rights demagogue. So I would just hesitate to vote for Jill, even with vote swapping, as it were. It's just a horrible turn of events as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
Harvey?
I had no idea. You're the first person I've heard say that. And his name is Butch. But beyond that, I don't know anything. And John Brakey, you're raising your hand?
Well, yeah, I am. I just want to jump in is that, I used to be a psychotherapist, and people underestimate the power of groupthink, mob mentality, and then how we as Democrats said, ignore those people, they're crazy. Well, they happen to be our sons or our uncles or our brothers. I mean, like in my family. Arizona looks very bad, I think, and only because the border problem, inflation, and I'm telling you, they've pumped in so much money into my state. It's just scary. I'm so sick of turning my TV on and watching what they do. And that's why I wrote a paper I just published here. The threat to democracy is how money, power, and algorithms shape our future of our democratic republic. And I go into that paper pretty hard because, I have been fighting big corporations since 1996 when I got hooked up with ConAgra. And I've been studying this antitrust. And, I know if I was in Georgia and there was a long line of people and I walked up and wanted to give them the water, I'd be arrested. but I'm outraged that a guy can go out there and start saying, hey, sign this petition and register to vote, and you'll be in a lottery to get $1 million. If I owned a coffee shop and I said free coffee when you walk in with your sticker that says I voted, I could be arrested for that too.
Wow.
This oligarchy we got going, we're turning into something very serious, and there's links in this document to let you know we are on the verge of becoming something that is going to be really horrible.
Well, I think that, objectively speaking, it's hard to imagine her having run a better campaign, Kamala
I
Harris.
agree.
I think she did an incredible job. And in terms of the election, the timing of Joe Biden's withdrawal was impeccable.
Yes, it was.
Because he waited until after their convention.
Yes.
Which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, all around the country, the Democrats are jumping up and down, get out, get out, get out. But he waited. I don't know if he planned it or what, but the moment of his withdrawal was perfectly timed. Mimi?
Yeah, I just wanted to say cart before the horse department in terms of a third party. Until Citizens United is reversed, and that will only happen in Kamala's administration with I would hope both houses as Democrats, but some Republicans might be ready to vote for this too. It would be devastating to have third party, a meaningful third party that could be funded by anybody who wanted to screw with American politics, which is, as we know, countries, billionaires, it doesn't matter who. But Citizens United has to go before we even talk about a third party. It's bad enough that they've got 2 buckets to put all their money in, but if they had 3, we would just multiply our problems, I think, exponentially. And I think that was the only thing that I really wanted to say. But Jill Stein, we don't know where her funding has come from. I mean, thank God Kamala Harris, thank God, has grabbed a lot of that enthusiasm. I know that because of Gaza, there's been such horror in terms of trying to support somebody that has allowed this to happen. But strategically thinking, which Americans don't, because we treat elections as entertainment and your choice as your vote, as your purity, as your everything, and it's private to you, and who cares about organizing? But it is an organizing tactic to get what you want. And with Kamala's administration, we will have a chance at, I'm sorry, but the 2-state solution, how long have we heard about that? But there might be a drive to actually make it happen. Too late for so many people, but it's the future. We have to embrace it and go forward. But Citizens United is, to me, the major thing on the agenda. Otherwise, our politics are going to remain.
Right. No doubt about that. Sandy Bozenius and then Mike Hurst. Sandy hasn't spoken yet, Mike, and then we'll go back.
Mimi had her hand up, and so does Lynn too.
Mimi Gurman has her hand?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't see it, but Sandy and then Mimi.
Yeah, this won't take long. I've been there's a person running against Jim Jordan. Her name is Tammy Wilson in Delaware County.
Yeah.
She's not getting very little help from the Ohio Democratic Party, unfortunately, or the state, a state that was considered, a swing state before 2 years, right after gerrymandering doesn't make sense to me. But it is a swing state, or would have been if we got more attention. But so I've been, the thing is, I've been out in this booth that she has organized at her biggest district. It's in Delaware County, and it's, I think, the most wealthy district in Ohio, the most wealthy city, at least, and very conservative. And I tell you, there's a lot of popularity for her, for another anti-gerrymandering campaign, and for down the slate. So I don't know how well it's going to do overall, but I'm getting lots and lots of thumbs ups. And one thing I want to say is, don't let people say you can't talk to Trumpers, because I've changed. I don't know that many Trumpers, but at the bowling booth, I was talking to them. And if we don't talk to them, definitely we can't change their thoughts. And if we do, we have a chance, because they're trying to do the right thing too.
Right.
That's it.
Well, just very quickly, of the Trumpers you think you reached, how many were men and how many were women?
Well, I'll tell you, that's interesting. You should ask that. I can't really tell you that because I don't remember offhand. But I can tell you that I got a bunch of people were coming up to the booth, and I'm thinking, okay, the pickup truck, the farmer hat, everything, old white men, and they were like, they were voting, in a Democratic ballot.
Wow.
So,
Well,
anyway,
Jim Jordan is one of the most awful people that ever existed. So there you go. Mimi and then Mike. Mimi German, did you want to say something, Mimi?
Lynn
Did,
Fireman.
Sonny, you were
Yeah.
talking, who Trump is talking to at these rallies. And in 2015, Joey Gibson and Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys started coming into Portland, Oregon, and Antifa was just at our beginning. And as a whole, as a new movement. And I ended up getting 4 people from Patriot Prayer fired from their jobs in Vancouver, Washington, and in Portland. And it was just me and this other woman, and we told their workplaces, their employers, that if they didn't fire these particular people, there would be protests like they have never seen in front of their business within hours. And that I gave them hours. I said, you have until 5 p.m. today to fire these people. So we got them fired. Well, then there was another rally in Portland, and I was never masked. I was never hidden. I blocked, black blocked. Anyway, so I went and I confronted them, and they confronted me directly. And I'm telling you that these people, Patriot Prayer, Proud Boys, the overall, and I know Trump speaks this way, and I don't mean to repeat things that he's saying and use it against him, but it's true. The overall IQ of people in the Proud Boys and in Patriot Prayer is probably so low that I just tend to doubt that so many of them are voting. I don't know that that's enough. I think that there are plenty of people voting for Trump to make this obviously a difficult election. But at the same time, those particular people who would stay at his rallies, who he's talking to, who he's blowing the mic to, those
I'll never.
I don't think that they're even going to vote. I don't think that they would know how to vote. And that's from a direct confrontation, many that I've had with them overall in Washington State and in Oregon State. So,
Well,
from my mouth to God's ears, right? Well, we'll see. But
I think after hearing that, Mimi, that we're grateful you're still alive. But that's interesting. The question, the male turnout versus the female turnout, I think is going to be a huge differential here. We'll have to see. Mike Hirsch, you've been patiently waiting. Thank you, Mimi, for that. And be careful, for God's sakes. I mean, didn't your mother tell you not to talk to strangers? Mike Hirsch, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out what Sandy was saying. There's been huge rallies for that candidate in Ohio. And I think that we're seeing a level of fatigue with MAGA that maybe the pollsters haven't quite taken account of. Trump's rallies are now thinning out faster than his hair. So that's a concern for him. And he seems listless and not very well energized. He's complaining about it being stolen, which is an odd thing to say before a single vote has even been reported, let alone counted. It's pretty clear that this experiment with fascism that we've had in this country is losing steam, whether that being counted through the Electoral College will dispense with MAGA and the threat. We'll hopefully learn that tomorrow or early this week. But I'm holding out hope that the way Trump and his minions have insulted Haitians and Puerto Ricans and Latinos in general, that Florida might be in play. And if we can get a call on Florida against Trump, then we can
my God.
probably all go to sleep early. And I think that North Carolina is, I think the Trump campaign is pulling out of North Carolina.
Really?
That's what I'm hearing. That I think they're putting everything into Pennsylvania. They're not looking at good numbers for them. The Harris ground game has been absolutely
Yes,
incredible.
we have heard that. We have heard
They've
that.
been knocking on doors to the point where people
Well-
answer the door and say, "My wife is out knocking on doors." So,
Well, I think, you know, and I think we can thank Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon for waking up the Democratic Party on that.
Yeah,
well,
she's been amazing.
Andrew's doing incredible work. And if North Carolina goes blue, that's largely Andrew Miller. Georgia, I think, we're seeing what Greg Palast has been warning us about for several months, if not years, that they're pulling out all stops to try to shut down the turnout in the big African American and big blue areas. What Greg says is they discriminated against people of color, and the color is blue. They've worked with, you know, as he's told us many times, they've worked very hard. Georgia, I think, might vote for Harris, but might come out for Trump because of all the shenanigans going on there. And John, I do hold out hope for Arizona because the native tribes and Latinos, I think, are going to hold. I think they're going to be able to vote for Gallego. I think he's going to help generate some enthusiasm up the ticket. And I think that Trump is going to be such a drag in a lot of areas. And Kerry Lake is also going to be a drag in that very important Arizona race. And then there are a flood of phone calls going into Arizona and people traveling into Arizona to door knock. So the difference in the ground game and the organization, I think, is going to make a big difference. Whether it's going to flip some of these states or hold some of these states, we'll have to see. But I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to go to sleep Tuesday night knowing that we have elected the first woman president.
Well,
And I think that that's pretty likely.
I think it's good you mentioned that. Linda's next, and then Michael Adler. We have to remember that I've said this before, so I hope nobody's bored with it, but we have to remember this mountain we're climbing here. This is the first time in human history, if she wins, that a woman of color will be the most powerful person on earth. I mean, that is a Darwinian moment, really. You know, that's up with the chimpanzees going into the desert and eating psychedelics. That's about what, you know, where we're standing, or the coming of the ETs who may have a hand in all this. We don't know. Lynn Finerman and then Michael Adler. This is a great discussion. Everybody just relax, and we'll go as long as we go. Go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you. I totally agree with Mimi Kennedy. Citizens United is number one target. The entire election has been overwhelmed and run by these imposters like Musk with their money. And what's most interesting to me is that even though their money controls everything, there's a lot of information about money that we don't know. I asked in the chat, you know, because there were rumors, but, you know, no facts, no data, where Stein's money was coming from. And Mike said that she's getting in-kind donations from MAGA. Now, this is really interesting to me. I mean, when do you, you know, in addition to Mila's amazing revelation that Butch Ware is nowhere, and, you know, these are the kinds of facts about issues, about where people are really coming from, that get obscured. The only issue that was really clear was the Middle East, Palestine and Israel. That was the only issue on which people actually were willing and able to take stands. And, you know, if they vote for Stein, they're voting for MAGA money and Butch Ware. This is
Well, also for Trump.
yeah.
I'm mystified. What do people think will happen in Palestine if Trump wins? For
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Yeah.
You know, Russia will invade Palestine.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think Kamala's campaign has been much better than, say, Hillary's was.
Hillary was awful. Awful.
Yeah, but the one huge mistake that she made, and which could have been massively educating for the voters, is that she should have had that Palestinian American representative from Georgia. If she had done that, not only would she have gotten Michigan and gotten that issue over with, she would have raised the conversation, raised the argument to a different level. And and so anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Michael, thank you, Lynn. Michael Adler hasn't spoken yet. Go ahead, Michael.
Just
Please,
real quick,
Myra.
one pessimistic thought is that the gender gap between males and females, the males appears to be 18%, and the females appears to be 16%, favoring their candidate over the other. And so we're going to have a lot of females voting more than males in order to make up that gap, 16 versus 18. The other thing I wanted to ask if anyone knows anything, I received a email today about a phone bank tomorrow from Eric Swalwell with a bunch of celebrities. Is this just an attempt to get my email and phone number, or is this a for real thing?
I don't know. Sorry. I don't know about that one. Who is Eric Swalwell? You may want to tell people.
Eric Swalwell represents California's 14th congressional district in Congress, Democrat.
Okay.
Frequently on, you know, TV shows and is a surrogate for Kamala Harris.
Michael, thank you for that. Thank you for having me speak in Topanga on
thanks
Friday.
for coming. I thought that was a good program, and
well, we appreciate it. Thank you. Myra Reeson now. Myra?
Yeah, yes, Michael, thank you. Michael is one of the leaders of the Topanga Peace Alliance, and they hosted Harvey this past Friday. But I'm hoping that we can talk about the possibility of a contingent election, which is something that Trump seems to be hanging his desperately his hope on. And we have to look at the potential for Mike Johnson and the Republicans retaining control of the House of Representatives. That could be fairly disastrous. And of course, we want to talk about the amazing polling that in Iowa that I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the woman's name, Ann Seltzer.
Ann Seltzer, yeah.
Amazing pollster did, but if I might start with the possibility of a contingent election, which would mean that if we didn't reach a majority of electors, that the outcome of the presidential election would go to one vote for every state. And because Republicans control more states than Democrats, they could actually throw the election to Trump, and that would only happen if the House of Representatives was controlled by the Republicans, if they have a majority of the representatives. So let me just add one thing to that, and that is that there's this amazing student reporter from Syracuse University who may have actually saved the day. This just a few days ago, he asked Mike Johnson if the Republicans retain control of the House if they would repeal the Chips and Science Act. And Johnson said, well, yes, we would. And Chips and Science Act is a huge job creator in that district in Syracuse, New York, where the Republican candidate for the House of Representatives had a clear lead in the polls. But Syracuse, New York is also counting on that Chips and Science Act going into effect and bringing massive new jobs to that district. And it may hit this wonderful journalism student actually impacted he changed the conversation all weekend in the talking heads all over the TV. They started talking about this possibility of Republican control of the House resulting in this repeal of this extremely important landmark.
It's interesting. The one outcome that seems to be at the top of the list for likely is that the Democrats will retake the House. Because in part because so many of the swing seats are in New York and California. I mean, the Democrats really screwed up in the last midterm. There are like 7 contested seats in California, and I think 5 in New York. And the likelihood of the Democrats taking them back is very high. And the House of Representatives changes on January 3rd. The new House, to my understanding, if there's a constitutional scholar who knows otherwise, please correct me, but my understanding is that the new House is seated on January 3rd. And as we all know, January 6th is the day that the electoral votes are finally certified in the U.S. House. So if, in fact, the Democrats take control of the House, the Speaker of the House, who will certify the election, will be Hakeem Jeffries, who last I checked was not a Republican. So that is an interesting, we're going to talk about all of this on Thursday, because we're going to have a better idea of where things have gone by Thursday, I believe. And who knows, there may actually be something we can do about it. I will say the most of all the polls, and I've been following the polls, obsessively, like many of you, of all the polls that have come out in this electoral cycle, the one that seems the most shattering is the one that you mentioned, Milo, in Iowa. If in fact she is in line to carry Iowa, which would be a complete shock, it is an indicator that, in fact, I believe this calculus of more women voting and overwhelmingly for Harris is what's at play here. There's nothing else in Iowa that could possibly be defining for a vote for Harris, except women voting overwhelmingly for her. I don't see it otherwise. Maybe I'm wrong, highly likely, but there you go. So we will deal with all the constitutional issues on Thursday when they seem a little more.
Thursday? What's on Thursday?
We will meet again on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
At 2:00. Meet again on Thursday at 2:00. There's still 35 people with us after an hour and 45 minutes. I think we're the only Zoom call in the country that does that. John Brakey, did you have a hand?
Yeah, I'd like to come back Thursday. I'd like to be in a situation by then we're going to get a good heads up what's going on. And if things look as bad as they do, I think that we need to talk about a strategy is how to go ahead and spread love and transparency. Okay.
Well,
help our brothers
I'll invite somebody from the State Department.
That their client really, that Trump really lost, because he's a tiger in a corner. Okay. He's about to go bankrupt. Okay. He's got prison sentencing and he needs to win this or he needs to cut a deal.
Well, let's put it this way. If Trump is winning on Thursday, I will invite somebody from the State Department to tell everybody how to get their passports.
Yes.
But if Harris is winning, then he'll be the one getting his passport. I don't think he'll stay in the country if he definitively loses. He's going to be sentenced one way or the other. I think November 19th,
He has
and
to
he's got no way out. I don't think.
I think he's
Mimi?
probably already looked for a safe.
My
Yeah.
lawyer is very, he's explained what's going to happen to me because I asked him that exact question. Okay.
Yeah.
He says most likely the judge will find him guilty. He'll spend 2 days in jail and he'll get probation on the rest. Okay. That is the worst that's going to happen there. That's what he thinks. Okay. And plus he's going to appeal. And you know, the reason he went after the judge's little girl is to create a conflict that he could use in an appeal down the line. Do you see what I'm saying? The judge don't like me because I offended his daughter, you know, or whatever.
Well, whose daughter didn't he offend?
That's true.
Tatanka, did you raise a hand? Tatanka, no? Okay, well,
I
listen.
was just going to say what John said. The most interesting legal people say what he said, and it'll probably take 2 years to get him to jail. So he's got time to figure out where he's going to hide out.
Well, I think we have seen one thing. And I wish we had another week so he could give more stump speeches. I mean, I have never seen, since dealing with my parents, a more rapid deterioration of a human being than in the last 2 weeks. I mean, Trump has really lost it. And, we can all thank God that Joe Biden dropped out because that would have been, his situation.
I will say one more thing, which is
I've
been feeling as of about 2 weeks ago, very optimistic about this election for the reasons people have talked about of a Harris victory. I'm also very sanguine about the GOP strategy to try to prevent certification. But we may need, a few folks on the call if it gets to the situation where there has been plans for violence. We really need to talk about a longer term nonviolent organizing strategy of how to stay together and how to build up the pillars of society, of a civil society, people doing what they can in their expert way where they're already good at, and really stay together for the long term for all this, no matter what happens between November 5th and January 20th.
Well, Lynn Feinerman has put in that he'll get a dacha, D-A-C-H-A, which is a beach house in Russian. And for the rest of it, if he wins, it'll be Dachau, where we're all going to wind up. So there you go. That's a play on words for you. Steve Caruso, and I think we let everybody go. We want to meet again, same time, same Zoom call. Send out a message on Thursday. And it's going to be a whole other world on Thursday. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Trump is not a stranger to violence. The way that guy attacks people constantly. I mean, this should be charged as treason because he's talking about attacking journalists with unfeigned severity. It's just out of control. The other thing I thought was interesting was Mimi saying that Chris Sauter got was it DOJ's approval that the records are for the voting ballots or the images are retainable and are actual records of the election. So that's pretty amazing.
Chris is my lawyer and he's a fabulous in fact, I have 4 lawyers I work with, and Chris is one of them, and the other 3 out of Florida, who were part of the 2000 recount. And by the way, I just want to point of privilege, if I could, Perry Busby is here, and he's a talker, a radio show host, and welcome to the show here. And I hope that you come back Thursday and you speak up because you're a very knowledgeable person and a good talker.
Perry, it's great to have you with us. And so listen, bring your lawyers, bring your passports, and we will have a choice on Thursday, 2:00, because it's early enough in the proceedings that we may actually have something we can do about it. And we're going to be looking at a whole other world on Thursday.
I just want to say this has been amazing. Thank you for the Arizona conversation. with John Brakey and with Ken Bennett and with everyone. Thank you, Mimi, thank you everyone for showing up. This has really been informational and inspiring.
Okay, well, on Thursday, if you want, bring Danny and, but we're gonna find out where we're really at. On Thursday, 2:00, Steve. Thank you, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Steve Caruso, thanks again for mining the portal there and doing the Zoom call. I'll send out the link, but it'll be the same one. And do bring everybody in. We'll see you next Thursday, okay? And we'll see you in Solartopia, hopefully, but you know, I don't have to tell you. Get some sleep, everybody, if you can, but make your phone calls, which I'll be doing. Take care, everybody.